Admiral Jinsu Park stood at the observation deck of Nexus Station and watched the 5 great fleets position themselves in space. Each empire had brought their most powerful warships to this meeting. The massive station floated in neutral space, far from any homeworld or colony. It was the perfect place for peace talks, or so everyone hoped. The Sector Empire had sent their newest battle cruisers. Their dark metal hulls reflected the station's lights like mirrors. High Commander Zix Thara commanded the Sector forces from her flagship. She was a tall reptilian being with scales that changed color when she was angry. Right now they were shifting between green and red, which meant trouble. The hegemony of worlds brought crystal ships that looked like floating jewels. Chancellor Vorthak led their delegation. His body was made of living crystal that rang like a bell when he moved. The sound always made Park think of wind chimes in a storm. The Hive Collective's vessels looked like giant insects made of metal. War Prime Gullmoth commanded them from a ship that resembled a massive beetle. His species worked as one mind, but Gullmoth spoke for all of them in these meetings. The Celestial Alliance ships were the strangest of all. They seemed to be made of pure light, held together by force fields. Ambassador Lyrian Vell represented them. She was so bright that others needed special glasses to look directly at her. And then there was the single human observation vessel. The UES Diplomat was tiny compared to the Empire fleets. It carried only Park and a small crew. Most of the Empire representatives barely noticed it was there. Park walked through the station's corridors toward the main conference room. Beings from dozens of species moved past him. Some looked at his human uniform with curiosity. Others ignored him completely. After 3 years of attending these meetings, he was used to being overlooked. The conference room was enormous. A circular table sat in the center with chairs designed for different species. Park took his place in the human observer section. It was behind the main table, where the real decisions got made. High Commander Zix Thara spoke first. Her scales were now bright red with anger. The hegemony has violated our territory again. 3 of their mining ships crossed into Sector space last week. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal body chimed as he turned toward her. Those systems are disputed territory. The hegemony has every right to mine there. Disputed by who? War Prime Gullmoth's voice buzzed like 1,000 insects. The Hive Collective claimed those worlds 2 centuries ago. Ambassador Vell's light grew brighter. The Celestial Alliance was there first. Our ancient records prove it. Park listened to the familiar arguments. Each empire claimed the same star systems. Each had reasons why they deserved the mineral-rich worlds on the border regions, and each was willing to fight for them. Perhaps we could discuss sharing the resources, Park suggested quietly. The room fell silent. 4 pairs of alien eyes turned toward him. High Commander Zix Thara's scales shifted to a darker red. "The human speaks," she said with obvious amusement. "How interesting." Chancellor Vorthak's chimes became sharper. "Humans have no claim to these systems. Your species has barely mastered interstellar flight." War Prime Gullmoth's compound eyes focused on Park. "The Hive Collective questions why humans are even present at these talks. You have no military power to enforce any agreements." Ambassador Vell's light dimmed slightly, which Park had learned meant she was thinking. "The human species is young. Perhaps they do not understand how galactic politics work." Park kept his face calm, but inside he felt a familiar frustration. These beings saw humans as children playing at being adults. They had no idea what humanity was truly capable of. "What if we made the border systems into neutral zones?" He tried again. Zix Thara laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Neutral zones need enforcement. What would stop any of us from simply taking what we want?" "You would," Vorthak chimed, "each empire watching the others. That has worked so well before," Gullmoth buzzed sarcastically. The arguments continued for hours. Park took notes and sent regular updates to Earth. The empires talked around each other, never really listening. Each wanted the disputed systems for themselves. As the day wore on, the discussions became more heated. Zixthara threatened to increase military patrols. Vorthak suggested economic sanctions. Gulmuth spoke of defensive actions that sounded a lot like attacks. Vel talked about ancient rights and moral obligations. "What about human space?" Zixthara asked suddenly. "Those systems could serve as buffer zones between our territories." Park looked up from his notes. "Human space is not part of these negotiations." "Everything is part of these negotiations," Vorthak chimed. "Humans have several systems that could ease tensions between the empires." "The Hive Collective agrees," Gulmoth buzzed. "Human systems could be redistributed for the greater good." Ambassador Vel's light grew brighter. "The Celestial Alliance would be willing to administer human colonies, for their own protection, of course." Park felt his blood grow cold. They were talking about dividing up human territory like pieces of a cake. They discussed it casually as if humans had no say in the matter. "Humans will not agree to that," he said firmly. "Humans may not have a choice," Zixthara replied. Her scales were now almost black with satisfaction. "What could your species do to stop 4 Empire fleets?" Park looked around the table at the 4 representatives. They were all nodding in agreement. For the first time today, they had found something they could all support: taking human worlds. He closed his notebook and stood up. "I need to contact my government." "Of course," Vorthak chimed pleasantly. "Take all the time you need. We will continue planning without you." Park left the conference room with their laughter following him. He walked quickly through the station corridors, his mind racing. He needed to send a message to Earth immediately, but as he reached his quarters, Park allowed himself a small smile. These empires had no idea what they were really dealing with. They thought humans were weak and defenseless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Outside the station, long-range sensors detected something approaching from deep space. The object was large, but its exact nature remained unclear. The sensor readings kept changing, as if something was interfering with the scans. None of the Empire fleets noticed the readings yet. They were too focused on their plans for dividing up human space, but Park knew what was coming. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 long years. Station Commander Torres was having a normal day until his sensors started acting strange. The Nexus station had the best detection equipment in known space, but something was confusing every scanner on the facility. "Sir, we have a contact approaching," his sensor operator reported, "but I cannot get a clear reading on it." Torres frowned at the display screen. The object was definitely there, but the readings kept changing. One moment it looked like a small asteroid. The next moment it seemed the size of a battleship. Then the sensors would show nothing at all. "Distance and speed?" Torres asked. "Approximately 6 hours out at current velocity. But sir, the mass readings are impossible. The computer says it weighs as much as a moon, then shows it as no bigger than a shuttle." In the conference room, the Empire representatives were still planning how to divide human space among themselves. High Commander Zixthara had brought up detailed star charts. Her reptilian fingers traced borders across human colonies. "The Sectar Empire will take these 3 systems," she announced. "They have good defensive positions." Chancellor Vorthak's crystal body chimed in agreement. "The hegemony requires these mining worlds. Our industry needs the materials." War Prime Gulmoth pointed to another section of the map. "The Hive Collective claims these agricultural planets. Our population grows quickly." Ambassador Vel's bright form hovered over the display. "The Celestial Alliance will protect these research stations. Humans have made some interesting discoveries there." Admiral Park watched from his observer chair. His face showed no emotion, but his fingers moved slightly under the table. He was pressing buttons on a small device hidden in his pocket. The device sent a coded message on a frequency only humans used. The message was simple: package confirmed, delivery on schedule. Somewhere far from the station, that message was received and acknowledged. "What about the human homeworld?" Zixthera asked. "Earth has significant resources." "Too well defended," Vorthak chimed. "Earth has orbital platforms and a decent fleet." Gullmoth's compound eyes glittered. "Nothing that 4 Empire fleets could not handle." Vel grew brighter. "Perhaps Earth could remain independent but under Empire protection." Park finally spoke up. "You are making a serious mistake." The 4 representatives turned to look at him. Zixthera's scales shifted to an amused green color. "Are you threatening us, human?" she asked with obvious entertainment. "I am warning you," Park replied calmly. "Humanity is not as helpless as you believe." Gullmoth's wings buzzed with laughter. "Your largest warship is smaller than our escorts. What could humans possibly do against Empire fleets?" Park smiled for the first time that day. "You will find out soon enough." Station Commander Torres was getting more worried about the sensor readings. The unknown contact was now 3 hours away, and his equipment was completely confused. "Sir, should we alert the Empire fleets?" his operator asked. "Not yet," Torres replied. "We do not even know what it is. Could be a sensor malfunction." But deep down, Torres knew his equipment was working perfectly. Something out there was deliberately confusing their scans. That took very advanced technology. In the conference room, the Empire representatives continued their planning. They had moved past discussing which systems to take. Now they were talking about how to take them. "A show of force should be enough," Zixthara suggested. "Humans will surrender when they see our fleets." "The hegemony prefers economic pressure," Vorthak chimed. "Cut off their trade routes first." Gullmoth's antennae twitched. "The Hive Collective believes in direct action, fast strikes, quick victory." Vel's light pulsed gently. "The Celestial Alliance favors negotiation, but with force ready to support it." Park listened to them plan the conquest of his species. These beings thought they were so powerful, so advanced. They had no idea what was really coming toward them through space. His hidden communicator vibrated once. The signal meant 2 hours to arrival. "Gentlemen," Park said, standing up from his chair. "Ladies, I believe this conversation is about to change dramatically." Zixthera's scales turned confused yellow. "What do you mean?" "I mean that humanity has been listening to every word you have said here today," Park replied. "And we are not pleased." Vorthak's chimes became sharp and angry. "Impossible! These talks are completely secure." Park reached into his jacket and pulled out a small recording device. He pressed a button, and Zixthera's own voice filled the room. "Human systems could serve as buffer zones between our territories." The 4 Empire representatives stared at the device in shock. "How long have you been recording us?" Vel asked, her light dimming with concern. "Since the first day of negotiations 3 years ago," Park answered. "Humanity has records of every plan, every threat, every casual discussion of conquering our worlds." Gullmoth's wings spread in an aggressive display. "That is espionage. An act of war." "Is it?" Park asked calmly. "Or is it simply good intelligence gathering? Something any smart species would do when surrounded by potential enemies?" Station Commander Torres was now genuinely alarmed. The unknown contact was 1 hour away, and his sensors were showing readings that made no sense at all. "Sir, whatever that thing is, it is huge," his operator reported. "Bigger than anything in our databases." Torres opened a communication channel to the Empire fleets. "This is Nexus Station Control. We have an unidentified contact approaching. All fleets, please prepare for possible threat assessment." The response came immediately from all 4 Empire flagships. They wanted to know what kind of threat, from which direction, and how big. "Unknown on all counts," Torres had to admit. Our sensors cannot get clear readings. In the conference room, Admiral Park was checking his communicator again. The message now read, 30 minutes to arrival. Prepare for decloak. Park looked up at the 4 Empire representatives. They were still arguing about his recording device and what it meant for their plans. I suggest you contact your fleets, he told them quietly. Why? Zixthera demanded. Because in 30 minutes you are going to meet the real human military, Park replied. And I think you will find it very different from what you expected. Vorthak's crystal body was chiming rapidly with anxiety. What are you talking about? Before Park could answer, the station's alert system activated. Red lights flashed throughout the facility, and an automated voice announced, Unknown contact approaching. All diplomatic personnel report to secure areas. The 4 Empire representatives looked at each other with growing concern. Something was happening, something they did not understand. Park remained calm in his chair. He had been waiting 3 years for this moment. 3 years of listening to Empire threats and conquest plans. 3 years of being treated like a child among adults. That was about to end. Outside Nexus Station, the Empire fleets were moving into defensive positions. Sector battlecruisers powered up their weapons. Hegemony crystal ships charged their energy projectors. Hive collective vessels spread their wings and prepared to swarm. Celestial Alliance light ships began glowing brighter, and in the darkness of space, something massive was approaching. Something that was about to change everything the Empires thought they knew about humanity. Admiral Park smiled as he felt the station's hull vibrate slightly. That vibration meant engines, very large engines getting very close. Gentlemen, ladies, he said to the shocked Empire representatives, I would like you to meet the real human fleet. The space around Nexus Station suddenly filled with light as something enormous materialized out of nowhere. The Empire fleets had been watching empty space one moment, and the next moment a massive human warship hung before them like a metal mountain. Station Commander Torres stared at his displays in complete shock. The ship was 3 times longer than the largest Sector battlecruiser. Its hull was dark gray with strange markings that seemed to shift and change as he watched. By all the gods, Torres whispered. Where did that come from? On the Sector flagship, High Commander Zixthera was having the same reaction. Her scales had turned pure white with shock. Her bridge crew was scrambling to get sensor readings on the human vessel. Report, she barked at her sensor officer. Commander, the readings are impossible, the officer replied, his voice shaking. That ship should not exist. The power signatures are beyond our understanding. The human warship hung silently in space, making no aggressive moves. But its very presence changed everything. It dwarfed every other vessel in the area. In the conference room, Admiral Park was watching the Empire representatives with quiet satisfaction. All 4 of them were receiving urgent messages from their fleets. Their confident expressions had changed to confusion and fear. What is that thing? Chancellor Vorthak demanded, his crystal body chiming with stress. That is the UES Retribution, Park replied calmly. One of humanity's newest warships. War Prime Gullmoth's compound eyes were fixed on a data pad showing images from his fleet. The Hive Collective has no ships that large in our databases. Ambassador Vell's light was flickering with anxiety. How long has humanity possessed such vessels? Park smiled. Long enough. On the bridge of the Retribution, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood watching the Empire fleets through the main view screen. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes, but her presence commanded immediate respect from every human officer around her. Admiral, we are receiving multiple scan attempts, her sensor officer reported. All Empire fleets are trying to analyze our capabilities. Let them look, Chen replied. They will not learn much. The Retribution's hull was covered with technology that confused enemy sensors. The Empires could see the ship was huge, but they could not determine how it was armed or powered. High Commander Zixthera decided to take action. She opened a communication channel to the human ship. Unknown human vessel, this is High Commander Zixthera of the Sectar Empire. You will submit to inspection immediately. Admiral Chen's voice came back clear and strong. High Commander, this is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen. I respectfully decline your request. You decline. Zixthera's scales turned dark red with anger. You are one ship against 4 Empire fleets. I am one ship asking for permission to dock at Nexus Station for diplomatic purposes, Chen replied politely. Is there a problem with that? War Prime Gullmoth had heard enough. He ordered his nearest ships to surround the human vessel. 20 Hive Collective cruisers moved to encircle the Retribution. Human ship, you are now surrounded, Gullmoth buzzed over the communication channel. Submit to our authority. Admiral Chen sighed. She had hoped to avoid this kind of demonstration, but the Empire seemed determined to learn the hard way. Activate defensive systems, she ordered quietly. The Retribution's hull began to glow with a soft blue light. Energy fields appeared around the ship, creating barriers that sparkled like stars. The defensive shields were unlike anything the Empires had ever seen. Ma'am, the tactical officer reported, Empire ships are targeting us with weapons. I see that, Chen replied. Let us show them why that is not wise. She pressed a button on her command chair. A focused energy pulse shot out from the Retribution toward the nearest Hive Collective cruiser. The pulse was precise and controlled. The cruiser's weapons simply stopped working. Its missile launchers went dark. Its energy cannons powered down. The ship was completely unharmed, but it could no longer fight. What did you do? Gullmoth demanded over the communication channel. I turned off your weapons, Chen replied calmly. No one was hurt. Your ship is perfectly fine. It just cannot shoot at anyone right now. On Nexus Station, Chancellor Vorthak was trying to scan the human ship with the station's most powerful sensors. The readings he got back made no sense. The energy output is impossible, he told the others. That ship produces more power than some of our space stations. Ambassador Vell was studying her own data. The defensive fields are beyond our technology. How did humans develop such capabilities? Admiral Park had been quiet during the display, but now he spoke up. You assumed humanity was weak because our older ships were small and simple. You never wondered if we might have newer ships. How many ships like this do humans possess? Zixthera asked. Park's smile grew wider. Would you like to find out? He pressed another button on his hidden communicator. Across the star system, 11 more points of light appeared as additional human warships decloaked. Each one was as large as the Retribution. Each one hung silently near important Empire installations. The Empire fleets were no longer surrounding one human ship. They were surrounded by 12 human dreadnoughts positioned at strategic points throughout the system. Impossible, Vorthak chimed, but his voice was weak with shock. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system again. Empire commanders, I suggest we return to diplomatic talks. I believe we have much to discuss. High Commander Zixthera looked at the tactical display showing 12 human warships. Each one was larger and more powerful than her entire fleet. Her scales had turned a sick yellow color. How long have you been watching us? She asked quietly. Long enough to know about your plans for human space, Chen replied. Long enough to hear every threat, every casual discussion of conquest, every assumption that humanity could not defend itself. War Prime Gullmoth's wings drooped as he realized the situation. The Hive Collective prided itself on superior tactics, but they had been completely outmaneuvered. What do you want? He asked. Right now, I want to dock at Nexus Station and join the peace talks, Admiral Chen said. I believe humanity should have a voice in decisions about galactic affairs. Ambassador Vell's light was very dim now. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. Then you will learn that humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time. We hope it does not come to that. In the conference room, Admiral Park looked around the table at the 4 Empire representatives. Their confident plans for dividing human space had evaporated in a matter of minutes. "Shall we begin real negotiations?" he asked politely. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal form was chiming softly with resignation. "It appears we have no choice." "You always had a choice," Park replied. "You could have chosen cooperation over conquest. You can still make that choice now." Outside the station, the 12 human warships waited patiently. They had revealed themselves not to start a war, but hopefully to prevent one. The balance of power in the galaxy had just changed forever. The question now was what the empires would do about it. Admiral Chen prepared to board Nexus Station. She carried with her terms for a new kind of peace, one based on mutual respect rather than fear. But first, the empires would have to decide if they could accept that humanity was no longer the weak species they had dismissed for so long. The real negotiations were about to begin. Admiral Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Nexus Station, accompanied by 6 human Marines in dark blue uniforms. Every alien being they passed stopped to stare at the small human woman who commanded such massive warships. Station Commander Torres met them at the docking bay. He was a nervous man with 4 arms and purple skin, and all 4 of his hands were shaking as he saluted. "Admiral Chen, welcome to Nexus Station," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The Empire representatives are waiting in the main conference room." Chen nodded politely. "Thank you, Commander. I appreciate your hospitality during these difficult circumstances." As they walked toward the conference room, Torres could not help asking the question that was burning in his mind. "Admiral, may I ask how humanity developed such advanced ships? Our records show humans only achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago." Chen smiled at the worried alien commander. "Commander, humans have always been very good at learning from their mistakes, and we have made many mistakes over the years." The conference room had been rearranged. A larger chair had been brought in for Admiral Chen, and the human observer section had been moved to the main table. Admiral Park stood as Chen entered, then took his seat beside her. The 4 Empire representatives looked very different from how they had appeared that morning. High Commander Zix Thera's scales were still pale with shock. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal body was chiming quietly with stress. War Prime Gulmoth's wings hung low with defeat. Ambassador Vel's light was dimmed to barely a glow. "Gentlemen, ladies," Admiral Chen said as she sat down, "I believe we need to have an honest conversation about the state of galactic affairs." Zix Thera was the first to speak. Her voice was careful and controlled. "Admiral Chen, the Sectar Empire demands to know how long humanity has possessed such advanced military capabilities." Chen reached into a briefcase and pulled out a data pad. She placed it on the table where everyone could see the screen. "For 37 years, she replied. "Ever since the first time Empire ships entered human space without permission. The data pad showed recordings of Empire vessels conducting what they called survey missions in human territory. The dates went back decades." Chancellor Vorthak leaned forward, his crystal body ringing with surprise. "Those were legitimate exploration missions." "Were they?" Chen asked. She pressed a button on the datapad. Audio recordings began to play. The voices belonged to Empire commanders discussing human weaknesses, resource locations, and the best ways to conquer human colonies. The recordings were clear and detailed. "These conversations took place on ships in human space," Chen explained. "Ships that thought their communications were secure." War Prime Gulmoth's compound eyes focused on the datapad with growing horror. You have been monitoring our communications for decades. We have been defending ourselves, Chen corrected gently. When four powerful empires keep sending ships to study your worlds and discuss conquering them, you tend to pay attention. Admiral Park spoke up for the first time since Chen's arrival. Every peaceful survey mission was actually intelligence gathering for future invasions. We know because we heard you planning them. Ambassador Vell's light flickered with what humans had learned was embarrassment. The Celestial Alliance never intended actual conquest. Chen pressed another button on the datapad. Vell's own voice filled the room, discussing how to guide human development and protect them from their own primitive impulses. Perhaps not conquest in the traditional sense, Chen agreed. But certainly the intention to control human civilization for what you believed was our own good. The room fell silent as the Empire representatives realized how completely their activities had been monitored. Every secret meeting, every private conversation, every casual dismissal of human capabilities had been recorded. Chancellor Vorthak was the next to speak. His crystal form was chiming rapidly with agitation. If humanity possessed such advanced technology, why did you remain hidden? Why appear weak? Chen leaned back in her chair and considered the question carefully. Because we hoped you would choose cooperation over domination. We wanted to give the empires time to prove they could be trusted neighbors. And if we had chosen cooperation? Zixthera asked. Then these ships would have remained hidden, Chen replied. Humanity prefers peace to war, diplomacy to destruction, but we will not be conquered by anyone. Gulmoth spread his wings in a gesture of confusion. The Hive Collective does not understand. Why reveal your strength now? Admiral Park answered that question. Because this morning you decided to divide up human space among yourselves. You moved from planning potential invasions to actively plotting the conquest of our worlds. Chen pressed another button, and the morning's conversation played back for all to hear. The Empire representatives listened to themselves casually discussing which human colonies each empire would take. That conversation crossed a line, Chen said quietly. Humanity could not allow such plans to continue. Ambassador Vell's light grew slightly brighter as she gathered courage to ask the most important question. What happens now? What does humanity demand? Chen stood and walked to the large window overlooking space. The 12 human dreadnoughts were visible in the distance, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. Humanity demands respect, she said. We demand to be treated as equals in galactic affairs, not as primitives to be conquered or guided. She turned back to face the Empire representatives. We demand an end to uninvited surveys of human space. We demand honest negotiations instead of secret plans for conquest. And if we refuse? Zixthera asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. Chen returned to her seat and activated the datapad one more time. The screen showed a galactic map with every major empire installation, trade route, and military base clearly marked. Then you will discover that humanity has been preparing for that possibility for 37 years, she replied. Those 12 ships you can see are not our entire fleet. They are simply the ones we chose to reveal today. The map zoomed in to show human ships positioned near critical Empire facilities throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of them, all previously hidden, all strategically placed. War Prime Gulmoth's antennae drooped as he studied the display. How many ships does humanity possess? Enough, Chen answered simply. Chancellor Vorthak's chimes became very quiet. This changes everything. It changes nothing, Chen corrected. Humanity still wants the same thing we have always wanted, peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors. The only difference is that now you know we can defend ourselves. Ambassador Vell's light began to pulse with what humans had learned was deep thought. What guarantees do we have that humanity will not use this military power for conquest? Chen smiled, and for the first time since entering the room, she looked genuinely pleased. You have the same guarantee you have always had. Human nature. We could have revealed our capabilities decades ago and conquered the empires when you were unprepared. We could have struck first and asked questions later. But we did not. She gestured toward the window where the dreadnoughts waited silently in space. Those ships carry enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, but their first action was to disable weapons rather than destroy enemies. Human power has always been tempered by human conscience. Admiral Park added his own observation. For 37 years, humanity has had the ability to dominate the galaxy. Instead, we chose to remain hidden and hope for peace. High Commander Zixathara looked around the table at her fellow Empire representatives. All of them were processing the same terrible realization. They had spent decades planning to conquer or control a species that could have destroyed them all at any time. "What kind of peace do you propose?" she asked quietly. Admiral Chen smiled again, but this time it was the smile of someone offering hope rather than threats. "The kind where no one needs to conquer anyone else to feel safe." Admiral Chen opened her briefcase and pulled out several data crystals. She placed them on the conference table where all the Empire representatives could see them clearly. "These contain humanity's proposal for a new galactic framework," she announced. "We call it the Galactic Cooperation Initiative." High Commander Zixathara's scales had slowly returned to their normal green color. She was still shaken by the revelation of human military power, but she was beginning to think like a diplomat again. "What does this initiative propose?" she asked carefully. Chen activated one of the data crystals. A holographic display appeared above the table showing star charts and territorial boundaries. "First, all current borders remain unchanged," Chen explained. "No empire gains new territory through conquest or intimidation. Expansion happens only through peaceful negotiation and mutual agreement." Chancellor Vorthak's crystal body chimed with surprise. "You would freeze all territorial development?" "I would end territorial competition," Chen corrected. "There are thousands of uninhabited systems in the galaxy. Instead of fighting over existing worlds, we explore and develop new ones together." War Prime Gulmoth leaned forward with interest. "The Hive Collective is listening. Continue." Chen activated a second crystal. The display showed trade routes connecting all the major empires, including human space. "Second, we establish free trade between all civilizations. No more economic warfare, no more trade blockades, no more using commerce as a weapon." Ambassador Vel's light grew brighter with curiosity. "The Celestial Alliance has always supported free trade. But what about military considerations?" Chen smiled and activated the third crystal. The display showed a new type of space station, larger and more advanced than anything currently existing. "Third, we create joint defense stations throughout the galaxy. Each station is controlled by representatives from all participating civilizations. If any external threat appears, we face it together." Admiral Park spoke up to explain further. "These stations would not be used against member civilizations. They exist only to protect against pirates, unknown threats, or aggressive newcomers to the galaxy." Zixathara studied the holographic station design with professional interest. "The Sectar Empire would want our own security personnel on these stations." "Of course," Chen agreed. "Every empire contributes ships, personnel, and resources. Every empire has equal representation in command decisions." Chancellor Vorthak's chimes became more rhythmic as he processed the information. This would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have been enemies for centuries. "Which brings us to the fourth point," Chen said, activating the final crystal. The display showed plans for a massive research and education facility. The design included laboratories, libraries, and living spaces for thousands of beings from different species. "The Galactic Science Institute," Chen announced. "A place where the best minds from all our civilizations work together on projects that benefit everyone." War Prime Gulmoth's wings spread with excitement. "The Hive Collective has always valued the advancement of knowledge. What kind of projects?" "Medical research to cure diseases that affect multiple species," Chen replied. "Environmental technology to restore damaged worlds, energy systems that are more efficient and less harmful, space exploration to find new homes for growing populations." Ambassador Vel's light was now pulsing with genuine enthusiasm. "The Celestial Alliance would contribute our most advanced scientists to such an endeavor." Admiral Park activated his own data pad and shared additional information. The Institute would also preserve the cultural knowledge of all participating civilizations: art, music, literature, philosophy, everything that makes each species unique. Chen stood and walked around the table, looking at each empire representative in turn. "This is humanity's vision for the future," she said. "Not conquest, not domination, but cooperation. Working together instead of fighting each other." High Commander Zix Thara was quiet for a long moment. Her scales shifted through several colors as she thought. "The Sectar Empire has one major concern," she finally said. "What prevents any single civilization from becoming too powerful under this system?" Chen returned to her seat and leaned forward. "The same thing that has prevented humanity from conquering the galaxy for the past 37 years, mutual oversight and moral restraint." She gestured toward the window where the human dreadnoughts still waited silently. "Those ships represent more military power than all 4 Empire fleets combined, but they have never been used for conquest because humans believe power exists to protect, not to oppress." Chancellor Vorthak's chimes became very soft. "The hegemony of worlds would require guarantees of equal representation in all decision-making bodies. Every civilization gets equal votes regardless of military strength or economic power," Chen assured him. "Decisions are made by consensus, not by force." War Prime Gulmoth stood and walked to the window. He stared out at the human warships for several minutes before speaking. "The Hive Collective has always believed in strength through unity," he said finally, "but we have sought that unity through domination. You propose unity through cooperation." "Cooperation is stronger than domination," Admiral Park observed. "Willing allies fight harder than conquered subjects." Ambassador Vel's light grew very bright as she made her decision. "The Celestial Alliance accepts this proposal in principle. We believe it represents the best hope for galactic peace." Her announcement seemed to break a dam. Chancellor Vorthak's crystal form chimed with agreement. "The hegemony of worlds also accepts. This initiative offers stability and prosperity for all." War Prime Gulmoth turned from the window with his wings spread wide. "The Hive Collective agrees to participate. Unity through cooperation is worth attempting." All eyes turned to High Commander Zix Thara. Her scales shifted through several colors as she weighed her options. Finally, they settled on a deep blue that humans had learned meant thoughtful acceptance. "The Sectar Empire will join this initiative," she announced, "but we insist on detailed negotiations about implementation." Chen smiled broadly for the first time since entering the station. Of course, the devil is always in the details, as humans say. Admiral Park activated the station's communication system. "This is Admiral Park to all human vessels. Stand down to peaceful status. Negotiations have been successful." Throughout the star system, the 12 human dreadnoughts powered down their weapons and defensive systems. They remained visible as a reminder of humanity's capabilities, but their threatening posture was relaxed. Chen stood and extended her hand to each Empire representative in the human gesture of friendship. Some of them were unfamiliar with the custom, but all of them accepted the gesture. "This is just the beginning," she told them. Building trust between former enemies will take time and patience. But it will be worth the effort, Zixthara replied. Her scales had turned a warm gold color that indicated hope. 6 months later, construction began on the first joint defense station in the neutral zone between Sector and Hegemony space. The station was designed by engineers from all 5 civilizations working together. 1 year later, the Galactic Science Institute opened its doors to researchers from across the galaxy. Their first joint project was developing medical treatments for a plague that had been affecting Hive Collective agricultural worlds. 3 years later, the first joint exploration mission departed to investigate promising star systems beyond the galactic rim. The fleet included ships and crews from all participating civilizations. And in a small office on Nexus Station, Admiral Park worked as the first director of interspecies relations. His job was to help resolve disputes before they became wars, using words instead of weapons. The galaxy had not become perfect overnight. There were still disagreements, still cultural misunderstandings, still moments of tension, but there had been no wars, no conquests, no casual discussions of dividing up weaker species. The empires had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their advanced warships or hidden fleets. It was their willingness to extend trust and offer cooperation, even to former enemies. And perhaps most importantly, they had learned that true security came not from being the strongest, but from making sure no one needed to fear their neighbors. The unknown human warship had uncloaked to prevent a war. In the end, it had done something much better. It had helped create a lasting peace.